right? The best damn league show, period. Which I should change at this point in time, because the problem is it does come from like an American sports show, which did have the word period on the end. But there's not even any Americans on the show anymore, so it just feels wrong, doesn't it? Like, I keep telling people it's a full stop. And by the way, that even sounds cooler, like the best damn league show, full stop.
Full stop.
Sounds fired, isn't it? Anyway, we're back. But technically, there aren't been any games, so we're going to do a preview episode. Because actually, the beauty of doing the good, bad, ugly format is you can essentially do any episode ever. You can even do like a historical episode because the framing just works, you know. We've got like a return guest. It's Initialise, who obviously was on. I think you were on at the very beginning of the year, weren't you? You were on like really
early on. Yeah.
Yeah, so obviously he is doing not just EMEA, etc., ERLs. Mainly, you'll probably see him doing the LPL is the main thing you do, right? Sometimes solo casting, sometimes with Nymera.
That's the one. Also do occasionally some LEC stuff. I've just been in Supervive and Deadlock all over the place at the minute. But yeah, lot of League of Legends.
Oh, you do other games as well. You do Deadlock.
Yeah, I did Deadlock for the first time the other week. Got called in, which was great fun. Was working with some Deathy over there, which was kind of fun. Supervive, I was been in open beta for that one. Got some Marvel rival stuff around about. At this point, it feels like I'm everything I get.
You're not a League loyalist. Like you would do some other games as well.
I would love to be. League was how I got into casting. It's how I started it. I mean, I started with Nymera and Mass One way back in the day, basically running our bargain bucket bedroom broadcast for LJL before co-streaming was a thing. And we started that way. You know, the dream would be to one day do full-time tier 1 league, but I think with way casting is at the minute, way esports at the minute, I think it is at least sensible to be looking around about, especially because as it stands, I'm doing mostly tier stuff with subbing into tier 1, trying to find a tier 1 slot somewhere out there in esports in general. Seems like a smart call so far anyway.
Okay. Also, I've actually just realised, never even discussed this on the last one, there is like a mild, bizarre connection to the LGL because Peter, for some inexplicable reason, to this day, thinks Ebby's really good. So
he is! I love
He's really good.
I'm right there with you!
Listen, in the LGL he was good. I'll give you that.
Knew what he was doing.
I'll give you that.
I will say that summer he was really good that summer. Like,
he had a good Cassandra, I'll give you that. He had a good Cassandra.
Good start to winter, awful spring. I won't defend spring. And actually summer, they nearly made that run. If they'd had a better spring, if they had a better spring, a better winter, they would have made it. Just saying.
Okay, fair enough.
Anyway, it's fine.
Okay, so we always start with the S. So what good point? Obviously, this can be any angle whatsoever. What good point are we coming with for LEC? This split, Initialise?
I think from a regional perspective, from a viewer perspective, I think we're going to have another really competitive split. It's actually been quite exciting, one of the LEC over playoff stuff over the last few times. I think we're going to have another one of those roller coaster splits. I think we got a few teams, depending on where they land, that should actually be competing for the top spot. I don't think it's going to be like the last few years where it was like, okay, G2 plus one more, competing for the top, and that's it. I think we are going to have your Kami Cores. I think you are going to have your G2s. Your Mad Lions had a really good run. Sorry, Mad Koi now, of course. Old habits die hard. You know, where is Fnatic going to land with their roster swaps? Is that going to change things out? And you kind of go, okay, that looks kind of good fun. And then you kind of looking at your mid-table teams. You have Vitality switching out the failed Niski experiment for Fleshy, who I actually think is pretty solid. You kind of go down that list and you go, you know what? I think we're going to have a really competitive split. I think we could actually have a really fun set of games, at least regionally. Internationally, the level, that'll be another point. But at least within the region, it should be a really fun time to be watching the LEC as a viewer, where the outcome, I don't think, is a foregone conclusion for once.
So I'm going to push you on this a little bit. So when fans think about a competitive league, they're thinking about two things, right? They're thinking, firstly, how many people are going to compete for the title? And the second thing, we're in summer now, what's the competition going to be like for Worlds, right? Okay, so when you say the league is going to be competitive, do you think both of those are going to be competitive, or are you just talking about the race for the number one?
I mean, and I very carefully put it, regionally, I think the race for number one is a big thing. I think when we come to my bad point, we might be discussing a bit more about the international stuff.
Sure.
But yeah, I think that's the case. I mean, obviously, regionally, that's potentially quite good news in terms of like local excitement and teams being competitive, and all of that stuff is fun and cool and stuff. I think the actual level of play, I do need to see a step up, because we saw the red line of G2 scrims at international. We saw the results; they weren't pretty. There's work to be done.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So I agree with you for the title. I think it's, if you'd asked me before winter split, how competitive I thought the league would be. I thought, actually, I was one of the few people who aren't Spanish who predicted that Poby were actually going to win a split this year, which they've actually successfully done. So I thought that there were basically only going to be two people that had a realistic shot at a split, maybe with Fnatic a long way as third. I didn't predict KC because I didn't think Vladdy was going to develop as fast as he did, and he surprised me, and I've talked about it. I've washed my hands on this multiple times on the show. Like he's been really, really good this year. But basically, I think that there's 3.5 teams that can win a split. They can win Summer. I think is higher than usual. Those three teams being Koi, G2, and Kami Corp, yes. And I think that's good. I think that the race for third, which I think is what a lot of fans will think about when they think about the competitive league, there's a danger that may not be that interesting, although the format may disguise how uninteresting that would be. I would say that there are, if I look at the teams, okay, so we're just going to, for now, we'll have a talk later about it, but I'm just going to put Fnatic in that group in the top 4. I look at teams that can come and contest for that top 4. I'm looking at Vitality, who hopefully have finally fixed their support problem. I look at GX, who in regular season, this format this year has a very long regular season, depending on how you want to define it. And GX are regular season merchants. The players on that team are all regular season merchants. So like, there's a world where GX can be really competitive. And BDS, I don't agree with a lot of their roster decision making, but I would say that it's a flip, and if it works out, it's great, right? So if we're talking about competitiveness of the league, I can see how those two things can go, but I hope that the competitiveness, at least, I think 4 to 7, 4 to 8 in the league are going to be very, very close. But I hope that competitiveness between 4 to 8. People recognize that when maybe the top 3 might be separate. So maybe people might say, I think there's a danger that this split might appear to be a non-competitive split because the races for first and third are the only things that people seem to care about. But we'll see.
Okay. But I see the angle, but I'll just say straight out, like, I am an elitist, literally. It's why when I did that old EU show, I used to call it Elitist United. Like, I've always said, I really only care about the top teams and who the really good ones are. So, for me, actually, this split and the last one are basically almost perfect splits, because if you tell me there are 3 or 4 really good teams, even better, by the way, this is like central casting. If you tell me they have different styles and the star players are in different positions, that's exactly what you want. That's actually the perfect setup. If you want, like, the really competitive... basically, in general, my favourite style of esports is either amazing dominant team that's just like legendary and setting history and then everyone else chases them, or Genji, I want like the not just like competition where it's bad, like that famous like fucking miracle run in 2020 where it's like everyone could be 8th or they could all be first place. Like that's where it's like bad and it's competitive. Or I want it like this. The other option is I want it to be like really good but competitive, like 3 or 4 different teams, and ideally, like I say, a contrast of styles. And in fact, I would always say the perfect way to explain it would be, for me, the bracket should decide most of who actually wins in the playoffs, which I actually think last split is a perfect example, because the famous example, as everyone bemoaned when G2 shit the bed at MSI, is we never actually saw them play Karmine Corp in a best of 5. Maybe Karmine Corp could have beaten them, and maybe they would have been there. So I actually think if you look at these 4 teams, here's what's funny. Even though I actually agree with you qualitatively, right now, you cannot say at all that anyone knows that Fnatic will contend for the title. We can't know that whatsoever. They brought in what is essentially a complete black box for a European team. There's no other Koreans even on this squad. I don't think they have any Korean coaches, mate. Like, they're actually going into a really weird scenario that not a lot of people have tried. And he's coming in for the summer split. We're obviously going to get to this later. But my point is, right, in theory, I agree. On a show like this, they shouldn't be considered one of the favourites. It shouldn't really be a big 4. I agree. It's sort of like 3 at the moment, and then we see how they do. But I will tell you an interesting detail, and obviously I understand why people don't keep up with this, is when people bet, people don't, despite what fans might imagine, bet for funsies. Like, lol, I'll just bet on this team because lol, like, well, with their exceptions, I will say people like T1 fans do just seem to bet on T1 no matter what, which I do love when T1's not the best, because it's like, cheers, give me that margin. But I will say generally, people actually bet, like you'd imagine, like investing quite cynically. They try to just do it for what they think makes sense. And I will tell you the most shocking thing is if you go to a lot of the sites, some of them run those markets where you can bet before the split who will win the entire split. And this might shock you. Fnatic is second in terms of betting right now. First place is Karmine Corp. Everyone thinks they're going to win. Second is Fnatic, which is like, even with Poby, by the way, this is recently I checked this. So I'm amazed at that. A lot of people, that means, by the way, are sort of copium themselves for the idea Fnatic is going to be really good. Third is G2. So that means MCOY, by the way, the current reigning champions, this is how badly they did, unfortunately, internationally. They are actually fourth, and they're like double the price of like Fnatic, for example. So I will say it's quite interesting that like there's almost this like invisible analytical market that actually thinks opposite to everyone else, or rather everyone's willing. I mean, I think both sides are interested in the idea they don't buy into MCOY being any good, but that it seems like they're almost all in on bloody Fnatic being in the final at this point based on the maths. What are you going to say, Peter?
Do you want to go first, Initialise, or?
Yeah, go on. I'll step in a little bit there in the sense that I feel like what often happens with those kinds of things is they're often very immediate results based type things. Like, okay, this happened, bad news, everyone's hating this, and again, particularly with EU fans, like for example, when Mad went internationally, they basically lost fans because they did so poorly internationally, despite winning with basically a budget roster way back when. And then again, happens again this time. They go to actually, but EU in general has a bad showing, and it's not just Mad Lions, but again, it's Mad Lions again, or Mad Koi in this case, of course, right? And they get the bad rating on that, and that then affects the numbers and stuff there. And I think for Fnatic, right, at least within the concept of the regular season, Fnatic were very consistent, at least particularly in winter. I think spring was a bit more interesting in the regular season, and then things fell apart in playoffs. Some of the inflexibilities came on through. We saw issues with like how do Razork and Humanoid synergize, and what does Razork do as in like how flexible is Razork as a player, how flexible is Humanoid as a player, and that fell apart in playoffs. But it meant at least in terms of the regular season numbers, you could pretty much guarantee the Fnatic would do pretty well in regular season. G2 notoriously a little bit, well, we'll try out this Warwick top thing. Oh yeah, that doesn't work anymore. Well, we lost a few games, never mind. Mad Koi clutch in playoffs, but where are they at in regular season? Not so sure about that one. Carmine Core, again, a bit more consistent in the regular season. Actually, generally speaking, they won winter, fumbled in spring, but actually still on the whole have had a pretty damn good year. And I can see why those numbers then are favouring those teams who are generally across the year a bit more consistent.
Yep.
Sure.
I mean, I would say that. Well, I don't want to talk too much about Fnatic, but I would say that for now. But I would say that I would have, if you talked to me at the end of last split, I would have told you that I would have been shocked if both Koi and G2 went to Worlds. And the reason why, I thought they were clearly, both strong teams, but it's no joke going to the MSI EWC schedule. It's like, I mean, as far as I know, they're not even scrimming right now. So this may explain a little bit why the I think they're scrimming now, but they've only just started the last couple of days. Because and I think this may be a little bit why the markets are like they are.
That's actually a really good shout.
Yeah, because they're going to be playing from a disadvantage. I think it's correct to play from the disadvantage because I think you must take a break. I don't think you could. I think you can push yourself, but I don't think even like the Chinese teams, like people always say, anyone's legends, they scrim 9 games a day. They don't scrim 9 games a day. Literally every single day at the same intensity, right? Like it doesn't happen, right? I'm just telling you, like there is an amount of scaling, there is an amount of how serious you're taking the scrims, there's an amount of like intent. You cannot go at 100% intensity for like an entire split. You just can't, right? You need to pick your moments, and that's why downtime is really, really important, right? So they're prioritizing the downtime. I would say that it risks them having bad starts, and this format does not allow you much leeway for having a bad start, because if you come top 2 in your group of 5, which is single round robin, then you're already 1 best of 5 from what? Okay, so I can kind of see, you would expect KC and Fnatic, unless they've shot themselves in the foot, to be the teams that I would say definitely KC should be favoured to be number 1 in their group. I don't think Koi should be favoured to be number 1 in their group. KC have been scoring for a lot longer. They've had a longer break. They're going to be fresh. They haven't been going to Canada with like 3 days of scrims or like 1 day turnaround in Saudi Arabia. And they, as a result, they should be fresher, right? In theory. So I think it's reasonable that G2 and Koi will start slow. The question is how fast can they catch up? And for the competitiveness of EU, I hope it's fast. I really, really hope we don't see a world, especially where, let's say, Fnatic are number 1 seed in Group B, and they're playing against GX in a best of 5 for Worlds, right? Like that would be the absolute nightmare scenario for me. Not as like a Fnatic hater, but in terms of we've seen these top 4 teams being competitive. and I want to see games between those teams. Yeah, for Spotted Worlds. But I think that is, to me, that is the scariest thing that can happen right now. That we see a team from Group B, G2 or Fnatic, play against a GX or Vitality, or vice versa. We see a KC playing against a Heretics, say. Would be a bit more surprising, but not impossible. For that world spot, and that is something which is worrying. But I think that the league can be competitive. Definitely, I think 4-8 looks very, very exciting, and all it takes is one of the top three, or to fall off, and then we're going to have a very, very exciting lower bracket. That's what I would say.
Also, I don't get into that doomer shit of like, but even the best LEC team won't compete for Worlds. Like, what fucking planet have you been on? As far as I can tell, there's about like 4 teams ever from the West competed for Worlds, mate. And spoiler, none of them ever won it. It's like they
got close. That's it.
That's like, I mean, at this point in time, nearly all those rosters are also super teams. Like, unless someone makes one of those, which even then, by the way, the thing I always tell people you have to remember, and sadly everyone forgets this, is for the past 3 Worlds, we've had the 4 LCK and 4 LPL teams. True, now they have one of them play a playoffs. There'll only be like 7 of them. But the point is that is still more than the old 6. Well, there's only 8 spots in the fucking playoffs. That's why you only get into the playoffs now by either really beating Asians, that hasn't really happened so far, or you just get some weird, bizarre draw like the Americans keep getting, which is like, also seems kind of sus that happens every year, but whatever. We'll ignore that for now. So the point is, there's no point worrying about the idea. Like, to me, worrying about like, but can we win Worlds? It's like, mate, let's just sort out actually having a good team in Europe first. You know what I mean? Let's have these teams play. And actually, like, if anything, that's also the counter complaint to last year, isn't it? It's like, we've got one really good team, but then they don't have any competition. It's like, well, fucking hell, mate. We'll sort that one out first, shall we? And then once we've got the competition sorted out, hopefully then we'll get a team next year that can do something. That makes more sense to me. Also, because I'm an elitist, I also like it that there's 4 teams and there's 3 world spots. Perfect. In that case, in theory, we won't have present company excluded. Not. Believe it or not, Peter, I don't like it when teams like Mad Lions and Splice go to Worlds, the old ones. I don't like it when it's like, I don't like it when the tension is, will they make it through planes? That's not fun for me. I want it to be, can any of them make the top 8? You know what I mean? That's the excitement. So the difference now is this. If instead in this league you subtracted 2 of the teams, and teams like Vitality and Herex will compete for the last world spot, that wouldn't actually be as hype as people think, because it'd be cool for them to get a trip to wherever it is, but they wouldn't do anything. They'd probably get battered, whereas actually even the 3rd best EU team could still be competent. I mean, if you actually saw even at EWC, G2 was fucking mixing it up, mate. In theory, they're not even actually necessarily our best team, and they were doing well. So no, I think in general the league's in quite a healthy place, contrary to popular opinion. I think it's pretty good, mate. Go on then, Peter. What's your point going to be? Okay,
so my good point is I spent this off-season watching the NNO Cup. So the NNO Cup is off-season tournament. I think NNO are a streamer team in Germany, right?
Okay.
Yes.
But the reason I was watching it is for the novelty factor, because this is the first competition, as far as I'm aware, that LEC teams have been competing against ERL teams.
Right.
So SK and Vitality accepted invitations from this German. They are a German streamer team, right? I think
they are. Yeah, they are exactly that one. It's like famously had people like No Way was on it. In fact, I think it was No Way to begin with. There's like a whole connection thing there.
Yeah. So Vitality and SK went to this tournament and they competed against these not the top. Well, I mean BK Rogue, like one very very top ERL team and a number of B+ tier, A- tier ERL teams, right? And I wanted to see it for the novelty factor, and I will tell you that SK Gaming were pretty trash. They were trash to the point where DOS went on Twitter after his ERL team had beaten them and basically said how trash SK were. And I thought that was a bit harsh, because you kind of want your LEC teams to play in these tournaments more, and going on Twitter and trashing them is not maybe the best way to get them to do this in the future. And also SK had made a ton of changes. But basically, SK were not very good. But the team that were really, really good were Vitality. And Vitality looked really, really good, including against SK at this tournament. And the reason that they looked really good is because their support was basically being a net positive. And I will be honest, I was a bit of a fleshy doubter. But this guy actually looked good. He's actually has like high skill participation on this team in this tournament. He's playing well with his support. His laning phase is... It's not incredible, but it's decent. He'll pass at LEC level, but it's not like he's not going to like dominate in the 2v2. But his map play actually looked good. It meant the Linkers looked good, and we're going to go from 2 splits of seeing Vitality, basically having a support that, if not actively running it down, was making the game about which side of the coin that they flipped. I think that's the polite way to say it. Into a sport that actually is capable of playing sport, understands where he's supposed to be on the map, even so it's hard to judge it. He looked good mechanically in that tournament. Hard to judge what his mechanics are until I actually see them against, until I see him against
whatever,
Mickey Eggs and things like this. But he looked fine in that tournament, okay? But he knows what he's doing on the map, and that to me, that makes me really optimistic about Linkers having a really good split. It's not about a Fleshy. It's like Linkers. I've said this before. The three really hype prospects I've thought from Europe were going to be Alvaro, Kalist, and Linkers, and the top 2 have both won titles this year, and Linkers has, let's just say Linkers has not, right? And Linkers, this year, please, it's about time. I think he's going to have a breakout split, and I think it's going to be because his support is actually a support, right? Capable.
Yeah. So, I mean, I actually largely agree. I think Fleshy is a player who's been around for a while, so he's actually coming with a lot more experience. He's come in from all of that. Like, he was on Immortals way back in the day, so like 2022 for a little bit there. He was on Supermassive, he's on FUT, he's been on Carmine Core, way back on NASA as well. So he's been playing for 4 or 5 years at this point across multiple different regions and been solid. I don't think you're necessarily going to have your crazy, flashy ERL levels that brought the hype to people like Paris or to Labrov last year when he was popping off on BDS. People going, wow, our next great thing. I don't think Flash is going to have that. What he is, though, as Peter was saying, was very, very consistent. You're not going to get like the most exciting laning out of him, but you don't necessarily want that. He will actually finally be a force multiplier for someone like Linces, who... this is a guy who, when I was casting when he was still in ERLs, was popping off on things like Diana when he was given the opportunity. But you need to give this guy, who is still a bit of a rookie, an actual platform to work with. When you're coming in as a rookie with a lot of attention on you for stuff outside of the game, stuff in the game, all of it kind of going on, your support isn't really a support, or certainly isn't very consistent at that time. It's not a fun place to be as a rookie jungler, especially when you aren't working with, say, like, opposite example. Someone like Yike comes up to G2, and his rookie split, he has got the 3 best lanes in EU, bar none, and your life as a jungler is so much simpler when your lanes will tell you, you're going to be here, you know what, it's fine, it's your first split, you can play Bel'Veth, we know you're comfortable on that, we'll just make sure you look great because we're going to collapse to whatever play you make. And as things went on, that stopped happening so much, and the Yike G2 synergy started to pull apart a little bit. We saw the world stuff last year where it wasn't quite syncing so much anymore, and so the changes happened, and it didn't work out for G2 so well. It worked out very well for Carmine Core, and Yike got a new lease on life. But all of this platforms off Yike getting a much better start to being a rookie with a team around to make jungle's life easier, because you don't play jungle in isolation. It's probably the most interconnected role for obvious reasons, and poor old Linces as a rookie has come in and just not had that. I think Fleshy will offer that support in terms of, no pun intended, in terms of his ability to play the map, to join up with the jungler, be the false multiplier, to make Linces look better. So if Linces is ever going to look good, it's this split.
Yep.
Long-winded way to say that. Sure.
By the way, I actually, this is one of the reasons, by the way, Initialise, even though it's not like me and Peter talk all the time, we're not like fucking attached to the hip or something. One of the reasons I wanted to do this show with him is, look, if he can't be a coach right now, but this motherfucker is so deep with the League of Legends needle in his veins, it's nuts, mate. Like he really will. Like, for fun, he actually now watches fucking LTA South and NNO Cups and fucking, he's the sort of nutter who'll just be like, yeah, I was watching LCP the other day. Why are we doing that?
Great team's an LCP.
No, but he has no professional reason to have to watch it. He's got limited time. He's got a family. Like, fucking hell. But whatever. The key thing is he obviously loves League, doesn't he? So, of course, he was watching the NNO Cup, even though some of us were vaguely aware it was taking place. By the way, that is actually in itself, though, kind of actually historical, though. Like, that implies to me, in the future, Riot is going to slightly loosen the sort of reins a little bit, and maybe mixture of streamer team things. I imagine the future also will be like streamer teams play LECs and exhibition matches. It's just obviously what they want to do.
League of our own again. Yeah, like the off-season particular, like that makes a lot of sense.
And also, it's just a way that you can tell the orgs, like, you can still make money outside of the LEC, because essentially you're sort of implying, like, it's It's like, the joke is, it's like that J. Jonah Jameson scene in the first fucking Spider-Man, like, freelance, the best thing for you. It's like, you go and make your own money. There you go. Well, we need more money as team. Go make some then, make an event, get some revenue. Like, that's what they're doing. So, first of all, that fair enough that actually takes place. You can see these people play. But then also, actually, this is a pretty good move, because the thing I think people forget, sadly, because the team fucked up and didn't make the playoffs, it was actually supposed to be Vitality was the last team that took the playoffs, but it wasn't supposed to be Heretics. BDS had shit the bed already by then. Like, it really should on paper have been Vitality. They were the one who had the promise, but the problem is they faded towards the end of the split. And one of the reasons why is Niski, unfortunately. Like, that move never worked. In fact, one thing Peter didn't even address was, it's actually even more hype for the fleshy guy, because it's actually intimated, if you go back and look, that they might have just already used this guy anyway last split, but he potentially had like visa issues because he's Turkish. Like, and it's just not as easy nowadays to get the visa. So there's a world where they would have promoted this guy anyway, basically, and had him play. And then obviously, crucially, as you guys are pointing out, he has literally last year played with Linkers already. So that's already a massive boon. Like, one of the things I think is so unfair for that player, and by the way, I will say it, Vitality fans, I agree with Douglas as well. I do think it's bullshit to take people who are hyped as junglers, bring them into the league and go, there's Hylissang. It's like, well, that's not even, I'm not even playing fucking jungle anymore. It's like, my joke is like, I only ever play Pyke if I play League of Legends. So I don't say I play League of Legends, I play Pyke. That's like a mini game that no one else is aware of what my mini game is. And I'm doing whatever the fuck I want. And spoiler, I don't care. I'm using that W to go wherever I want. So in fact, I've always told the story that the worst thing that ever happened to me playing Pyke was that really old game that Hylissang played, where he just like fucking split pushed basically. Because when I saw that, Peter, my brain was like, I will do that all the time now. So my point anyways, when you play with Hylissang, nothing prepares you for that. Nothing can. In fact, he seems like, and I don't even mean this in terms of attitude, seems like one of the most uncoachable players ever. Like, he just sort of does what he's going to do. And it actually seems like the coaching tends to be of how, the joke is you coach other people as to how they're going to react to what he does. So I already think like that's an incredibly steep learning curve. I've seen some fucking all-time great junglers have their issues synergizing with that guy. Then, if you're the newer person, Linkers, oh, okay, cool, we got Hylissang out of there. Here's role-swapped Niski. Now listen, we all want to do that copy of like, but Niski plays with the new one. As a mid laner, he was a really good mid laner. That's why it works. The problem is, we don't. Spoiler: if you saw him moving around the map as a support, he certainly wasn't like the old Niski on fucking Zoe or whatever, Roman or whatever. That was not the same player. So unfortunately, I also think if you're Linkers, like these are counting against your career, mate. People are taking these as like strikes against you, and they're going to want you because you're not a massive name replaced. I do think that's bullshit. So at least this guy gets at least one real split with a real support who actually he's played with in the past. That actually sounds like quite a fair sort of like there's like a proper chance to do it basically. And I assume at this point in time you won't get sort of the Hylissang thing of sort of like you have to just let him do what he's going to do, and it's hey man, just be zen in that. Like no, we're just going to play real League of Legends now and coach them to play support and fucking jungle properly, I assume. So that already sounds great. And then lastly, the other person that I'm really happy for is Kazi. Like mate, this guy, it's so sad to me that right at the period when he got really good, he just like attached himself in some crazy like fucking murder-suicide pact with Hylissang to like just go down with the ship with him. It's like, bro, you actually have been really good. Like, I should imagine, what would the last few years like if Kazi had been the one to play with like a Mickey X or something? It could have been fucking insane. Like this guy could have won a whole bunch more championships. Yeah. So I'm also really glad to see him actually play with a real support, and now we're just going to play normal real League of Legends without any stupid caveats or theory. We're just going to play League of Legends now. Now at Macapad, by the way, according to your CEO, you are fired if you don't do it this split. Now you can just do normal League of Legends and actually just coach the team normally. Great, let's get all the fucking weird stories out of the door. Just do normal League.
Okay. I will put this out there. Fleshy is notoriously a Pyke picker as well. So not like gotten away from the Pyke.
There's another plus.
He's like his fourth or fifth most played champion of all time. He's like got like an 80% win rate on it or something. So like they've not quite escaped it. It's still there.
Okay, I appreciate it.
I will say also this tournament, the one thing that was big about this tournament is the fact they got BK Rogue there. So BK Rogue, for people who don't know, I think we have their coach? I can't remember, but basically they're like a top. They're not like Los Otones.
Top four, maybe?
Yeah, they're top
good. They're
four.
A good team.
To be unkind, top 8 maybe, but they're definitely. I think they're top. I think they're about 4th, 5th. We got to see them play against LEC teams. We saw them play against SK. I think they were better. So they won one series 2-1 and lost one series 3-2. But I think over the course of those 8 games, they were probably the better team. So that's better than bottom tier LEC. But when they played against Vitality, they got smoked. And Vitality, we'll say Vitality 5-6 team in LEC. So that kind of gives you an idea of a gap. and this is finally a reference point where EMEA fans, Masters fans, can actually see where their teams fully rank, right? And I don't think we're going to see lots of Atonas play in a tournament like this, but I think you would see a similar performance. I think Los Photonics would still have struggled against Vitality, but I think maybe they, as a slightly better ERL team, they would have been. Yeah, it would have been a really fun series, but I think they would have smoked SK at this tournament, to be honest.
Okay. Right, here's the angle I've gone with for this. For my good point, I know later we're going to discuss Poby and Fnatic and all. I've got a specific, like, very, very narrow lens, though, that I want to bring in as a good point. Because I think one part about the Poby humanoid bizarre swap for Summer that I think is actually a massive positive is just getting to see Razork with potentially a normal fucking mid laner. So it's going to be the same take as the Linkus one I just did, right? And people don't seem to appreciate this. Razork, the entire time he's been popping off in the LEC, played with Vethio and then Humanoid. Right? These are two of the most idiosyncratic mid laners probably ever to play in League. Every coach who's worked with them basically will tell you, like, oh, you have to sort of, again, it's like a Hillside, you have to like specifically learn their way of doing things and thinking and communicating. And bizarrely, they've also got completely different sort of swag. Like the Vethio one's sort of this weird thing where it's like, he's maybe not going to ask for what he needs, but he just needs certain things at certain points in the laning phase to get to the point of the game where he can carry. Humanoid's thing is this weird thing where it's like he will tell you once what he wants, but then if you can't do it exactly how he's thinking, he'll just sort of in his brain go like, I'm just going to proceed as I'm going to do it anyway and do whatever he's going to do. And then you just have to sort of hope at the end somehow the Nexus explodes and you're like, yeah, we were on the same page, high five. Yeah. Like, so if that doesn't work, you can see this is why the guy, I always say he either goes from like the game goes awesome or he just looks completely disconnected. So if you are Razork, mate, the one thing I can tell you right now, I will guarantee this, is Poby will just be the kid in class who isn't raising his fucking hand and just stays quiet at the back of the class so no one picks on him. He's just going to come in, mate, and play probably like fucking Azir and stuff, just the most boring ass shit ever. Just do his job. He's Korean, so I doubt he's going to be super calming. I don't think there's any world where he's telling you, like, come to my lane. Like, in this scenario, if you're Razork, mate, the shackles are off. It's time to just play, again, just like with the Vitality example, time to just play jungle, mate. There's no weird considerations, but I assume he'll even be a skilled player in the middle there. So I actually think it'll be very interesting and enlightening for Razork's career, because I think actually Vethio took most of the blame for the Misfits thing now. Most people think actually like Razork was sick there. If anything, it's Vethio started to develop. I think actually right now, because of the way the playoffs went, I think a lot of people did blame Humanoid more than they blamed Razork. The problem with that scenario as well, though, I will always say, is the roles make it really difficult to blame as an outsider. Like, classically, by the way, if you're the jungler who goes in, just like the support, you will die, so you will get blamed for the int. The mid laner, especially if they're a mage, listen, I'm a big fan of people like Froggen. You can always look not that bad in a loss as a mage mid laner. That's just the way the game fucking... You can just choose to step out. You can, sorry, I had to go back because they were going to flash them. You know, you have a million
I must claim.
There's a million excuses. The point is your way of looking. That's why actually I have always thought that's the one part about people hating on Chovy I agreed with. It's not the idea he like ints or chokes, but if you look and you go, you didn't do anything in the big game. That is more like my angle for the mid lane, you know. So I think this time around, if Razork still has the same problems he has in this split, then they're just Razork problems, mate. They're not something to do with some humanoid disconnect for years, which, by the way, the worst thing about that storyline is it's like a soap opera story that went on for too long. It's like 4 years long or something, mate. Like, we could handle it after 2 years. After 4, that gets boring because there was never any answers came from it. It was just the same thing over and over. So I feel like we're going to get finally like a real sense, like aggregate between it all and without those players of who Razork is. Like, I think to now, it's probably skewed because I always tell this story. When Razork was coming up from the RLs, I remember people telling me, no one actually hyped him, by the way. They were just like, oh, he's the guy who just like fucking camps mid for, I think it was like Militia or something, right? Wasn't it? Like,
yeah.
I think they were like, he just camps mid for him. Whereas the joke is when you watch in the LEC, he's a very different player. Like, he's the fucking guy who's constant activity all over the map. So I'm very interested because this is a guy I think justifiably has been hyped, but I do also think he's had certain fatal flaws. But it's really hard in team games, especially like League, where the whole result of the win is based on how the team plays. It's not like individual scores in the same way we have in games like Counter-Strike, where you could play your web bomb site great, but the other guy fucked up his. No, in League, it's really hard to extract a player from wins and losses. So I want to know who the real Razork is. I hope we're going to get to find out this split. Thoughts? Come on.
So, I'm kind of there with you. I think this is going to give us another bit of a window into Razork. And I think Razork has been a really good jungler in the LEC.
Sure.
He's actually been playing really well. I think when Fnatic have looked good, he and Mickey X have been this incredibly aggressive, sometimes over-aggressive duo that makes things happen, but there's been this disconnect, and changes needed to be made. They've gone with Humanoid. I think that's an understandable decision. We'll come to the decision that was made later on, but as it stands, that's the one that's come on. I will now be interested to see how Razork looks, though, because there isn't anything, you can't necessarily hide behind excuses anymore, because if it goes wrong again, then you start to have to ask more questions. Because I think Razork, when you can play fast, Razork is great. If you're asking Razork to play slow, I don't think Razork has really got the best skill set for slow playing around objectives, around the map, and we've seen him overplay that before, and that's got them in trouble. And again, Mickey X adds into that because the two of them are very good at fast play, but we've seen both of them have the less good side of that when it doesn't work out. And I am now interested to see how this new look Fnatic works with that element in place, because the two of them together could cause a really cool thing for Fnatic, where they get to play the game their way with people there to back them up doing it, and that could give them a really cool identity, playing in a really Fnatic way that should be really exciting. Because I actually really enjoy watching Fnatic in the regular season, at least this split, and I think this should allow Razork to be more Razork, for better or worse.
Yeah, so I love that your point is like now your positive point is now we get to see the real Razork. We get to go see,
the psychopathy unleashed.
But for me, like it's Razork frustrates me because I think in Europe we don't have infinite players that I think are capable of going toe to toe with the top Asian players, right? And I think Razork this year and last year has maybe not been that, but at the peak of his career, maybe 2 years ago, maybe 1.5 years ago, like this is a guy who, when he was playing at his very, very best, was completely unplayable in Europe. Like he was playing so well. He was like dominating every single game. And he looked like somebody who you could take to an international and who could do what Inspired does sometimes at internationals, right? But every single time we get to playoffs, he underperforms, right? And he, it looks bad against G2. It looked bad against G2 as well. Yeah, G2 as well. This time. But basically, and bad against KC as well, right? And I think at some point, this guy is somebody, he needs to show that he's not just a flat track bully. I think that he has the potential to be good, but for whatever reason, he hasn't been able to perform in playoffs. And the way that when we've talked about it on this show, I've always said is Fnatic need a performance coach, right? And who do they need the performance coach for? It's not Mickey, it's not Human. Well, maybe it's a little bit Humanoid, but it's not really Humanoid. It's for Razork and it's for Oscar. But the thing which frustrates me the most is the split that Fnatic played the best. They had a really good performance coach. This is under Nightshare, the first split under Nightshare, right?
I mean, Nightshare's great, yeah.
Yeah, but basically they had the performance coach and they had to cut budget and the performance coach left. Okay, so then they've had 1.5 years of no performance coach, and now finally they cut Humanoid and now they bring in a new performance coach. And to me, I think that they should have just tried it with a performance coach. Maybe they can't.
Why does that have to be one or the other? I know.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe they can't afford a performance coach with Humanoid salary, right? Like I've heard that it's quite high. So maybe that.
You're saying it like they took him to the pawn shop and they traded him at fastest value, then used that money to get a performance coach. Okay, I see.
Yeah, sign another player for like a quarter. Even if he's on 50% salary on the bench, they sign a player for a quarter of the salary, and now they have enough to get a performance coach, which might finally means that we can see the best of Razork. But for Razork, it's not about his ability. It's not about his ability because I watched this guy play solo queue. I watched this guy play in regular season. It's just about the mental stuff, and you have to fix the mental stuff. And at some point, if he gets a performance coach this split, he has a performance coach this split, I hope that he is pestering this guy literally every week. I want my one-to-one with you this week. I'm going to work on, I don't really know what performance coaches do, meditation or whatever it is. But I hope that he gets his things fixed out, because to me, we've gone past the point where this is mechanical. This is clearly mental, and it clearly happens literally every split. And they don't go to Worlds this year if he doesn't fix it, right? Because now you've taken away your one consistent, in playoffs, right? So yeah, that's what I would say, Razork. So yeah, hope that we see the real Razork this split.
I mean, I'll add on to that mental thing because I think it is. Every time he gets to playoffs, guy panics or gets into a high pressure scenario and goes, well, what do? I engage, I make a play. And it's always a fast play and just needs to have a moment where he or someone else on the team just says, take a second, we're playing this one slow, and someone listen to it. When you can play fast, great. But when it starts going wrong, when you're hitting game 4s, 5s, you just need to not take the first angle you see, then we see Razork just brain off. And it costs them consistently. And a little bit of performance coaching on that, just in terms of some high pressure decision making, would do wonders for this guy.
And go on.
The one thing I always tell my players is trust your mechanics, right? Like, if you are a good player, you do not need to flip everything, because if this is a 55-60, 45 or 60-40, you will, if you are good enough, you will get another chance later, right? But that's the Razork we see in regular season, but it's not the Razork we see in playoffs.
And the traditional thinking usually goes, actually in all sports, that it is easier to convince an aggressive player to like be a little restrained at times, like pick your moments, than it is to get like a very conservative or defensive player to then like go demon mode and go all out. So the difference is this seems more plausible, it can actually work. But again, I will cede some of that. I've ceded some of this towards the later Poby discussion, so we can just tie it in. Now, here's the funny thing. We actually have an ad on this episode, which is cool. It is from Factor Form, which is like a type of like daily greens type drink. Now, what's funny is I am someone who hates vegetables. I am in a war against vegetables. My horror story wouldn't be zombies. Obviously, some Day the Triffids shit where there's just vegetation taking over everyone. Maybe I become a vegetable at one point in time. Rick and Morty jump the shark like this show has a while ago, whatever. So basically, I'm one of those people, even when I say I eat keto, I really just eat the carnivore diet, right? But I make myself have some vegetables at times, just because, guess what? I also go to the toilet, and that gets awkward if you don't ever eat any vegetables. If you know what I'm talking about, you know. If you don't, just thank yourself. Thank the Lord you've never had to experience that. So basically, you do need to eat vegetables, one thing I've sadly learned. But I am the sort of person where we have actually even in the past had companies that do like greens and stuff, and it's like that. And the problem I always have is this: if there's even a tiny taste or a whiff of vegetables in there, my brain will just be like, not having it. And I'll find a way to avoid it. What's actually banger about these, I've found, Factor Form, is it's like they must have designed it for people like me, because they've intentionally done it where they've tried to make the flavour not be nasty at all like that, not have any weird like bitterness to it. They've actually done a really good job with like blending the flavours together, so it masks that aspect. And so as a result, this is actually the dream. I wish they'd had this when I was a kid, then I wouldn't have been sat at the fucking table like, I want to go and watch TV, and they're like, you have to finish what's on your plate. I was like, well, we'll see. Let's play a game of chicken. And then the joke is that you actually just lose if you're the kid, because you haven't thought that through, have you? You just wait forever and you don't eat the food. So this is how you eat your vegetables. You actually can just get Factor Form. And what's brilliant is they changed the game in that sense, because actually they can make the flavour taste good even, which is mind-blowing, but it is true. And also, if you want to have something as like a daily thing, it has all the stuff covered in it. Like they say, one scoop delivers 100% of your daily nutrients. So if you don't realise, that's another thing. Most people out there who probably don't eat vegetables and don't pay attention to their diet, there'll be something you are deficient in. You're just not aware of it, unfortunately. In fact, you might not even be aware that certain things about your mood during the day is because you have a certain vitamin deficiency, or you're just not getting something in the rest of your diet and whatever sort of food. I know what gamers are like. You're all eating fucking pizzas and Uber Eats deliveries all the time. So this is also a great way to fill in the gaps elsewhere, much like a good jungle. I could have done a whole thing with vegetation and jungle there, but I realised everyone instinctively who doesn't play jungle irrationally, and to some degree justifiably, hates all junglers. So I didn't want to associate the product too much with junglers, because at the end of the day, some people say that role should be deleted and it should be a 4v4 game. But enough about, I don't know, people who play bot lane in Vitality. Insert the jokes. And then lastly, I also think it's a banger that they do this thing where you just sprinkle this in water and you just mix it up. And it isn't like making a big smoothie where it's all like, by the way, the texture alone of a smoothie, if you're not a fan of vegetables, will make you gag, mate. Like that. It's the worst thing ever is when you blend and then you see that little like, whoop, whoop, like, oh, mate, that's like some fucking nightmare fuel shit out of like a never-ending story kids movie or something. It's alive, mate. Get me away. That's not like this. You just put the thing in, the powder, you mix it up, it'll all blend in, it'll be nice, it won't be all thick and goopy, and basically it has everything you want: prebiotics, probiotics, adaptogens. These are all things, by the way, that help things like your gut health and stop bloating and all that jazz. Yeah, it's all excellent stuff. And so you can start your day, right, with Daily Greens by Factor format. Factor75.com/BDLS, Best Damn League Show. You will get 40% off plus free shipping on your first order. That's Factor75.com/BDLS for 40% off plus free shipping. Factor75.com/BDLS. They just ask you to say it 3 times. So I did it. I did 3 times. Right now, let's go to the bad points. Peter. Oh, sorry, Initialise. What is your bad point?
My bad point is basically I said, look, regional competition's been good fun. International competition has been a little bit problematic. And there's been some quite frank conversations behind the scenes with some very candid behind the scenes interviews from Raya, doing some stuff behind the scenes, Carmine Core, some discussion with G2. I know Grab's having the same conversations about player work rate and the amount of scrimming being done, how good the scrimming has been, how many games people have been playing. And it's basically most people saying, look, we're just not working hard enough. And we're turning up to internationals undercooked, underprepared, and it's making EU look bad. And I think considering the level of play that EU has shown in the past, even across a couple recent years, it's been sort of slowly teetering on the edge of really dropping back down again. I think first stand was right for Carmine Core, but it was still a bit shaky. But the league in general has been struggling to turn up to internationals looking ready and prepared with their own take on the meta or their own way of looking like the squads that they are supposed to be in terms of this is G2 playing G2's way, this is Carmine Core playing Carmine Core's way, whoever you want to talk about. The whole Mad Koi, Mad Lions debacle over the last few years at international has been tough. And the fact that we've had some very frank conversations in the behind the scenes videos and tweets and stuff from various organizations saying, look, players are on the chopping board because they're not working hard enough, is quite telling to me. And I'm hoping that we see people step it up for Worlds and across this split, because it wasn't very pretty at MSI.
Mm-hmm. I think that's fair. I just push back to this, which is we often see these conversations happen after EU underperforms at an international competition, right? So what gives you confidence that things are going to be different this time? Just out of
Well, they don't, which is why it's a bad point. I'm hoping we see some changes. I'm hoping that actually you're looking at a team like, say, Carmine Core's got for a lot of very young players, and Callisto saying, like, I should have worked harder. I didn't play enough games. You've got people like Yike who actually, I think after first stand, that squad rested on their laurels a little bit. They've had a bit of kick up a bum, having fumbled in spring. They'll want to do better. G2 on many things, but I think lazy is not it, and I think they are a quite disciplined team on the whole. We've seen the scrim stuff and all that kind of thing. I'm hoping the organization with the better systems in place, the players who are younger and hungrier as well, like your Carmine Cores, will show up a little bit differently there. But there's no guarantee on that, and that's the reason why I put it in the bad point. Is like, look, the international fumbles were tough. The work rate, at least going by what we've heard from various people, and again, I'm not in the scrim rooms. I'm not, I only get the second-hand stuff as much as you get from behind the scenes in EU in general. But yeah, we'll need to wait and see. I'm hoping it changes, but I'm not confident across at least every team.
Sure. Okay. I think it's a little bit different with each team. I think G2, no one has any complaints about their work rate. I think Koi should have beaten CFO in upper bracket. Lower bracket, they were kind of like stomped, but in upper bracket, if they win that, is MSI worse than, is MSI actually a worse tournament for EU than First Stand? I mean, at First Stand, people forget Casey lost to TL. And TL didn't look that good in LTA, right? So I think that I think G2 and Koi, I have no doubt that they will be able to ramp it up. I think KC's point, I didn't see I didn't see the Callisto thing you're talking about. It concerns me that Callisto is saying that.
So because full quote for the record there. It's basically Raya in a behind the scenes video saying, look, I'm aware I didn't push you as hard as I could have, but on the other side, you guys didn't step up either. And Callisto went,
sure.
And I think Yike as well, basically went, we should have done more, basically.
So I don't know what's going on behind the scenes at KC, but to me, it was very obvious what KC's issues were. Was that First Stand, there was 1 week break between First Stand and the start of the split, and they looked like they were playing the entire split on fumes. KC didn't actually. So they were first in regular season. Or they were top 2 in regular season. I can't remember whether they or Fnatic were top. It was a long time ago. But basically, they were top. Okay, but they won so many series 2-1. I remember, right? And they were losing a lot of games that they shouldn't have been losing. And they looked a lot of the time where they were autopiloting and just relying on their team fighting and mechanics to get them those late games, right? They were winning games, but they weren't winning games pretty, and they weren't winning games in a stable way that would work against international competition. And as an outsider, looking at it, because I don't know what happened behind the scenes, it looked like they never took the time to reset. So they were never able to ramp up. And they did ramp up a bit in playoffs because there was 1 week because of the homestands. They weren't invited to somebody else's homestand. I think it was probably the Spanish one. So they weren't at that homestand. So they got like a 2 week. They got like in the middle of the season they got a break, and then they looked so much better after that break, but not at their winter levels, right? So to me, what it looked like for KC is that they didn't take enough of a break in order to be able to hard ramp up later. Because when they tried to ramp up, they couldn't ramp up, right? Because they hadn't had the break, right? So that's what it looked like to KC. I think their issue is completely different from others. I do think that certain other teams like Fnatic and SK have maybe... No, not SK, Fnatic and BDS have maybe made changes where they don't think that the work culture fit that they want to have fits the players that they have. So maybe you can give credit where credit is due there. But I do think... I don't think the solution... which I know is going to be a very unpopular one amongst the fans, is to spend the entire split scrimming 3 blocks a day, right? Like it is when you get to playoffs, scrim your 3 blocks a day, right? But actually, ironically, I think scrimming that much at the start of the split means that you're not going to be able to ramp up later, and that to me is a problem, right? Now people say, oh, it's just video games and things like this. No, like sitting in the players have to show up in the office at 10. They leave at 8. You're trying to be an industry where performance matters, and you are trying to you want to build your habits, right? And building good habits when you are exhausted is not the way forward. But I will agree that definitely when you're coming into playoffs, if you're playing six games a day, when you're in the middle of playoffs, maybe you could be working a bit harder, right? So I agree on that. I think going into international competitions as well, I would say that there used to be a time when the economics was good in EU, where European teams would take more boot camps compared to what they take now. I remember Vitality did a boot camp back in the day where they went to China and they scrimmed like RNG and all of that. And I know that other EU teams have been to Korea and we don't get those boot camps. So it's a lot easier to get complacent inside your region. And I think that is an issue EU has. I think working harder matters, but I think channeling it in the right way matters.
Yeah, there's something about efficiency. And I hear that point. That's a much more elegantly way put or a caveat added to the point I was making. So I see where you're coming from, and I completely agree.
There's 2 angles to this. On the actual international fumble side, I will just go with this angle, which is, even though I do think G2 was actually shit at MSI, like what's weird is they would, at best in each series, they could have one good game. Even then, they weren't guaranteed to win it. And after that, they would just completely capitulate and just get wrecked by anyone. The problem is, if you watch TWC, they sort of redeemed themselves. Like, they actually looked pretty good there in some of the games. In fact, the joke is, they actually gave Gen G one of the better series that people have given at the time, the unbeatable Gen G. So the G2 one, to me, I mean, a lot of the complaints about that one, I don't take as seriously because, for example, Skewmod's a rookie. Like, I don't put that on him. So I do. That's why I'm very harsh on Labrov, because he's played a long time and he's been in a lot of like LEC teams. He's even been in playoff scenarios, and this has repeatedly happened. But the MCoy one's the more interesting one to me, because I do actually think that MCoy on aggregate over both the events didn't give a very good showing of themselves. Like, I am with you. Yeah, it's not impossible they could have beaten CF4, but my issue is, first of all, I actually do think that BLG series, you will never you've watched the LPL a long time, PT. You will never in your life get a top 2 LPL team with as weak a jungler as they had at that tournament. Spoiler, he doesn't even play for them anymore. Nope. And by the way, I always say this, if you watch the LPL, he wasn't recruited because of who he is. He was recruited to not be Way. And essentially because he literally even beaten them in Thunder Talk. So like, that was even one of those almost like weird cynical ones. Like, just get the guy who just beat us, basically, sort of thing. And they did it like partway through a split. Like, there aren't many people available at that point in time, especially not who were going to, and think about it, the other clubs, if they're good, aren't going to transfer their player to you. So you had to basically, that's why that was the player taken. And spoiler, there's a reason why he's not in the team anymore. It makes perfect sense. So if you were El Yoya and MCoy, you absolutely looked a gift horse in the mouth there, mate. That was your chance to get what G2 did and get the big like international upset. And even worse, even though on one level, I think it is harsh to criticise El Yoya for overall team results, because I kind of agree. I think actually if you look at their roster, this isn't anything close to a super team. This is a bunch bunch of ERL players from 2 years ago that they built a squad around, and then now suddenly with like the clever pivot to Jojo Midland, they suddenly have like just enough firepower. But I'll always say that they don't have like crazy fire. They have just enough firepower where if everything goes well, it can work. Like I do think they'd look at the best team by the end of the last split in LEC. But my issue is this: if we're all, when they win LEC, like we are, going to go, hey, well, listen, you're the big name. Basically, it's your team. Everyone plays your way. You get all the credit. That means when you then lose later, though, mate, you get a lot of the blame too. And I do think in that series, mate, if he'd have actually turned up like people hoped he would, the Hopium, that was a real chance to win, and in the end it didn't end up being. And by the way, BLG was not good, as I say, at either of these two tournaments, so that's a bummer for me. Like that's kind of like I have to put some of that onto Koi as a team, LEC as a league that let them win the league, etc. There's the other thing. If you're the Karmy Cop guy sat at home like, well, we would have won, well then fucking beat these teams, beat Koi then and go and win the league, because I agree. I do think the MKoi one's hard to defend. I think that's just a straight fumble.
Like G2 looked good at EWC, but I think teams came in and scrimmed less there, and G2 had the pressure off, and they got to play a little bit more like themselves. BB didn't look as flawed, that's the kind way of putting it, as he did at MSI, where I think he was genuinely very poor, but there was a lot of members who weren't firing on all cylinders. But the fact is that you are coming into these internationals with a kind of level of individual form that isn't what we expect. Okay, Elyoya, why weren't you there in the clutch moments? Okay, G2, what the hell is happening topside? You can go down the list of things and go, okay, well, even BLG, right, who came in with the weakest BLG has ever been, the most flawed they have ever been, was still dangerous and were taking you out like that easy, when Bin is not the Bin of old, where Knight was trying but wasn't getting with the rest of the team, where Base One was basically forced into dog mode, where he never really got to play in the team. He never got to be Base One the player, he got to be Base One the Band-Aid, and it was the worst that team has ever was, and he was still struggling in that way. Good stuff from G2 at EWC to turn that around, obviously, and actually the pressure came off and they looked a bit more like it. But I have no doubt that there was some very frank conversations in the background about, okay, guys, what the hell happened? We need to change this up because this wasn't working.
Yeah, I mean, first thing I'll say on this is, I know we're an EU show, but shout out to Shadow, who's the new BLG jungler, who is EU,
Italian Stallion, let's go.
Yeah, Italian Stallion. Well, I mean, Jizuka, the Italian Stallion Mark II. But yeah, the reason I bring up Shadow is, I speak to Shadow reasonably, not huge, not like every week, but reasonably frequently behind the scenes. And I know that this is a guy, he's tried to come back to Europe a couple of times, maybe 2 or 3 times, and has basically just like literally nobody is even willing to talk to him. And now he's at the BLG #1 jungler massively. He's been the injection of fresh air. Maybe they're just going through a honeymoon period, but he grinded his way up from some trash LPL teams all the way to the top when basically other people weren't willing to take a chance on him. And he's got his chance now. Please. You've got your chance now, Shadow. Go and get your LPL title. Okay, enough Shadow glazing. He's ex-EU now. Hasn't played in the EU for 5 years. But yeah, that's for Shadow. Yeah, but I agree with you. I think that, look, the people that we glazed, the reason Koi were champions of Europe is because of how good their mid-jungle was. And I will say, Jojo was mixed at internationals, but he was better playing at MSI in World Cup than he was in NEC.
He was good.
Super, who I'm the eternal Super doubter, but let's be fair to Super. Super played well at those internationals, right? So yeah, he was clutch, right? So you have to put, what is the difference? It's the jungle support, right? And I'm
one of the most hyped players in the team too.
Yeah. Yes, and I think Eluria was worse for sure, but I think Alvaro was a lot worse. And he had like 2 games, I think, where he played really, really well that people will maybe remember, but his general performance was below par. And
that's a fine way of putting it.
Yeah, I mean, like he made On look like the better international. On in LPL is really good, but when he goes international, he always runs it.
Well, even then, On regularly was looking very up and down. I'm there with you. I was expecting On to do this internationally. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what happens when he goes international, but basically, like he made On look like the better support, right? And frankly, if you have any ambitions going internationally, you need to be better than the On that plays at international tournaments, not the On that plays in China. Yeah, I mean, for me, the disappointment for MKoi was that I didn't see Alvaro and Lyoya perform. I think some of that has to go on Lyoya, but a lot of it as well has to go on Alvaro, and I was very sad. I would say that that he didn't take the opportunity to push on. And I don't know whether that's he's getting away with stuff in the EU that he doesn't get away with internationally. I don't know what the solution is. I don't know whether it's he's tilting. I don't know whether it's he's stressed. I don't know whether he needs his home comforts to be able to survive. I don't know whether it's, because he shouldn't be getting stomped by these. It's not like the mechanical level. It's not like he's getting stomped by Genji or HLE bot lane, or he's getting stomped by CFO and a BLG bot lane that is at the worst that they will ever play, right? So it's not that he's not good enough to beat these guys, right? Because he's clearly good enough to beat these guys. It's that something is off, right? And I don't know what the solution is, but for sure he must bear a lot of responsibility for this tournament.
I want to push back or reframe the other topic, though, the work rate one, because there's two angles I want to address here. First of all, this is where people have got to stop being binary. It's not about the idea someone is lazy. It's that when you're competing against the best of the best, by definition, from Korea and China, these are the teams that are going to stop you doing anything. They are the opposite. They are incredibly grind heavy. So it's not that you're being lazy. There's not like there's only two options. It's binary, like lazy or super grind. The problem is you're playing at an acceptable level for your region. You're competing with the best in Europe in that scenario. But it's the same with sports. If you ever hear the stories of the legendary athletes, it's not that the other players don't play it. They just play a normal amount, like 2 or 3 hours a day. Obviously, it's a physical sport, so you can't play as much. That's why then when you hear the stories about the guy who's there at 4 a.m. and he does like a 3-hour workout, then does his workout with the others, and he does like twice as much basically. That's why they're legendary players. My problem is this, right? I'll give a very quick analog, which is I think this is what happens in the online space of giving like advice to people. One of the worst things I think about the internet is that people use it still like it was 15 years ago, and everyone that follows you and in your group is like your friend or your family, and you know them, and you have like some shared values. Whereas in the modern day, because of all the algorithms, actually it's more like you're just broadcasting a signal to the whole world, which means every spectrum person is included, right? And the issue I always think we're giving general advice goes like this. I actually think oftentimes you'll see it manifest that the person who takes the advice on board isn't the one the advice was for. So I'll give you two very quick examples that I'm sure people will be able to relate to. So one is you have all these like manosphere people who always tell all the guys who are nerds, like, guys, you've got to like get out there and talk to women and go up and say this line and stuff. And it's like, they mean for like a normal looking guy in an office who all he needs is like, basically talk to the girl. They don't really mean like you're the sweaty nerd who hasn't, like, you haven't even fixed all the bit. You haven't even got your hygiene. You haven't been in the gym. You haven't even socialized with normal people. Then might talk to a girl in a club. If you just go straight to walk up to the girl, be confident and just be yourself and go, hey, you're probably going to fall flat on your face. That advice isn't for you yet. It's for like someone else in the crowd. Similarly, I actually think that women try to big each other up, and they always say all that stuff like, girls, like, don't be afraid to, take up space. Don't be afraid to let your voice be told. Don't let them tell them that you're difficult when you just have your own opinion. The problem with that advice is that's great advice for a lot of women who naturally feel timid and they don't feel like they can say things, or they feel like they don't belong. The problem is you'll get someone who's a really annoying, obnoxious person who that then just gives license to be really obnoxious and think like, well, no one can tell me anything. And that you can see how this advice misapplied goes really nuts one way or the other. So similarly, right, when you say you guys both hit all the bingo card there of like, well, the thing is, like, we can't practice as much as the Chinese. That's like too much, because here's the real dark secret of League of Legends and any esport that involves elite Asian players from Confucian societies. They will practice too much. They're playing a game of chicken when it comes to practice. If I'll just practice an unlimited amount because I don't give a fuck about things like mental health, work-life balance. And again, we're doing best of the best over there, mate. Like, if you can't make it, they don't go, fuck, this player's been up. They go, get another player. That's been the style forever in the LCK and the LPL. So the problem I have is this. Even though as a premise, I agree with the idea of, work smarter, not harder. The problem I have, you'll see where the analog comes in now, is, bro, most players that I've known in the West, they were never getting close to actually burning out from raw practice, mate. They might burn out because of stress, or they're stuck in Germany the whole time, or they have a bad teammate, or they don't have a performance. There's a million factors could make you burn, but it's not that they were practicing the game too much. Like, the problem with the grind aspect is there is a degree to which it clearly does scale. Like, there's a reason the best players in the world play loads of League of Legends. So my issue is this. It's a bit like when someone starts the gym, same thing. They always go, I don't want to overtrain. It's like, mate, you haven't even done anything yet. Like, the risk of you overtraining is non-existent. In fact, that mentality will even hold you back from making any gains, because what you'll do is when you get close to like 10 reps, you'll think like, right, I can stop now. It's like, actually, you should push yourself a bit. You know, you remember in the same concept, I think this is the analogy I want to use here. The concept for the gym is you want progressive overload. So you're not going too far over, but you're gradually going up, so you're constantly forced to go to a higher level. The problem I have in Europe is this: people tend to just vacillate between, again, it's binary. You either have to just grind yourself to oblivion and you're going to be wrecked before even the playoffs of your split arrives, or you have to go, whoa, guys, like, let's have like 2 hours theory, and then we'll have a little warm up, then we'll get a couple of games, but we're going to play intentionally. And the problem with all that, Peter, is it sounds great, but no one's ever made it work so far. Every team I'm aware of that was an elite Western team did just grind a lot. I'm not aware of anyone who's mastered this work-life balance aspect so far.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm not even saying about work-life balance, right? What I'm saying is the gym thing, to go with the gym analogy you're talking, you don't just go from 2 blocks every day to 3 blocks every day.
Yeah, that's fair.
Right. Like, I think
You have
that...
to build up a little bit.
Yeah, I think you have to build up a level, and I think that... Okay, firstly, I'll talk about other Western team, which is FlyQuest, which, you know, FlyQuest scrim evenings 2 times a week, right? Which I think is a reasonable amount of workload. I think you can go and push. But what I would say for that, I think there needs to be, like, I think people don't rest enough.
Okay,
and
that's
what I mean
by
rest is, if you rest, like, take your time off, like, just literally go and do whatever else, and then push yourself really, really hard, like, when it comes, right? And to me, just going back to the KC example, right, because KC didn't take their downtime, or they didn't take enough downtime, so that when they needed to push later, they couldn't, right? And this, to me, is the problem, right? To me, the efficiency is not about do your grind. You've got to fucking do your grind. If you're not playing solo queue in the evening, like, you're not going to get better. But you need to, like,
there is the play hard and work hard. You got to have that other side of the coin. So if you're taking that week off, take the damn week off.
Yeah, and to me, that's where I think Western teams struggle, right? Because a lot of the Chinese teams, so I don't know Korean teams, right? But a lot of the Chinese teams that I've seen work, they're capable of pushing hard, for sure. People do burn out, but when they burn out, they're faster to recover, because it's literally just go and spend Okay, I've got to be careful about what I review.
Yeah.
Go and spend like a couple of days in bed, unable to leave your bed because you literally hate the world so much. But at least you're not thinking about leaking those 2 days, right? Okay, let's leave it.
Maybe go and sing karaoke and enjoy some company with a drink.
Yeah, sure. Karaoke is the solution.
Okay, if you want to see it kind of going wrong this year for LPL, right? Like top esports once the first time came back and fell off a cliff because they burned out, weren't fixing their issues, and collapsed and had a miserable spring playoffs. Anyone's Legend managed it better, but have come back from an insane international schedule. Their first few games back, because they literally dropped and started playing again, are awful. They have not been winning. They don't look good, but I have no doubt that they've been taking a lighter schedule because they want to win again. But they have got to have the moment. At the minute, Anyone's Legend look quite poor. BLG don't, but they also dropped out of a couple international tournaments a bit earlier, so they had that little bit of extra time off. Yeah. AL haven't. AL right now look shit. I bet you in about 2-3 weeks they will not anymore. But for now, you wonder why. There is you got to take that little bit of time where you're not doing the grind. So when you do grind, you hit it 100%.
Yeah, exactly.
By the way, I do like that angle too, actually, as a reframe, Peter, because I actually will say that's something in my own life the last few years I changed, which is I used to also have times where I would take half a day off, but the mistake I would make was I would just idle on my computer. I would look at YouTube shorts or read through Reddit the whole time or be tweeting. And what I realised is that's not actually proper time off. That doesn't nourish you. That doesn't refresh you. So what I would actually do was, say I had a bunch of like shows for like 5 hours in a day, I would book in my own actual calendar like 2 hours to explicitly like go off the PC and watch a movie and just like turn everything off and just disconnect my brain. Because I know what you mean. Like in a way, you want the actual like. It's why actually that's where the performance coach, the joke is. It's not about helping the competition, but if you actually do stuff like meditation, it hopefully is going to take you out of the stressful environment briefly, isn't it? So I know what you mean. That's an angle. By the way, I could even argue that's actually one area. This is always the point I've actually made. It's why it's so brutal that Fnatic don't give a fuck about performance coaches. performance coaching is literally the secret weapon of the West. They don't believe in it in the LCK and the LPL in the same way. Like, it's not a thing over there. Again, they don't need to, sadly, because they've got unlimited people that can just come into the roster. Like, they can just do a roster move if they fix it. So they don't do this whole thing. I could even argue, mate, from some of the LCK teams I've heard of, I don't think they do actually take proper time off, mate. They just do stuff like, the joke is some of them actually play solo queue for fun in their time off. They're still in League of Legends. Like, their idea of like fun is like play solo queue and have anime on the second monitor. It's like, mate, you'd actually be better off just turning off that main monitor and just watching the anime and just fucking kicking your heels up and having a cup of tea or something. So you can even argue maybe LCK doesn't actually nourish themselves as much with the rest, I suspect. I like it. Okay. Now, here's the thing, Peter. This bad point is right up your alley, mate. It's basically, I'm like a fucked up AI that just confirms everything you thought was right anyway, and then tells you that, like, affirms that you are actually a super genius. Because you ready? My bad point is this roster move they've made in mid lane in SK Gaming, and here's why. So they've removed Rika and they've brought in Abbedagge. Now here's why this is a bad move, Peter. Now, you ready? This might sound counterintuitive. I predict Abbedagge will play better than Rika and the team will be slightly better. Look, they've changed most of the roster, but the team might even be slightly better than SK before, because SK was a really bad team. But here's why it's a bad move, Peter, because on two angles. One, they've done a move that I hate. I actually despise this, which is, you don't believe in Abbedagge. No LEC team believes in Abbedagge. That's why Abbedagge wasn't playing in LEC until summer in the worst team now. So what that means, you didn't do this move. It's like the BLG example I just gave earlier. You didn't do this move because of who you're getting. Like, that's the key. If I bring him in, he's going to be really good. We're going to be in the playoffs. We might contend for Worlds. And you know what? He's going to be my mid laner for next year. If anything, you've brought this guy in, like he's come in the last few times, on some cynical, like, last minute, like, he's a veteran, chuck him in the game. He'll be all right and he'll play some mages or something, right? That already I hate, because it's summer split. That means if you're SK, you're basically saying, like, we're just writing off this whole year. And then the Rika angle, I don't even fuck with Rika. You know that, Peter. He's not one of my guys. He's one of your people. But I do agree with your philosophy in the past, right? Being as this isn't his first rodeo. He was already on fucking Mad Lions years ago. If you bring that guy again to the LEC, you don't bring him for two splits and then say, fuck off. Because if you brought him, you were bringing in Peter because you wanted him, because you thought he could work and you were going to build the team around him. So if you bring him, you may as well just off in for a penny, in for a pound. Do the three splits. You weren't going to fucking go to Worlds anyway. Just do the three splits. Then, by the way, you will then absolutely know it didn't work. You'll know you tried everything you could. You will. By the way, I think then you'll also have been good faith to him that you actually brought him into the roster and did that. So I think it's bad in that sense. Like, I think it's cynical to kick him out, and I think it's cynical to bring this guy in. Like, I don't, even though the joke is, as I say, I actually think the results might even be better. I imagine he'll trip over and win a game at some point. But you get my angle, Pete. I think it's a bit done. You can go first on this one, because I know it's one of your pet peeves.
Yeah. I mean, this is my pet peeve. Like, it doesn't even make logical sense, right? Are you going to go to Worlds with Abbedagge? No, you're not going to Worlds with Abbedagge. So what have you just done? You have told literally any rookie, because SK, like, let's be clear, GMing is not the same in Europe, right?
Yes.
Like, Fnatic have infinite budget. G2 have infinite budget, right? They can, like, get whoever they want. If you are a team with a lower budget, you need to, like, have other things that you can provide to your players, right? You need to take gambles. You need to be able to persuade the next top rookie that he's going to come to your team and you're going to go and support him. You need to, like, do this, right? But signing Abbedagge and kicking Rika doesn't even make logical sense. Like, even if they put, like, if they go 8th to 9th, is that going to convince, like, is that going to convince Oman to come and play for you? No, it's not going to convince Oman to come and play for you. But what it's going to do is the next time any rookie wants to come, they're in the back of their mind thinking, I'm gone in 2 splits. Like, I'm not going to get a chance to develop. I'm not going to get the chance to take those risks, right? Like, one of the things I will say about Vitality is, you know, for whatever their flaws, and trust me, Vitality have had a lot of issues this year, right? But the fact is that, like, Mac let miss playoffs because he let Knack pick, like, a Yasuo top into fucking Rogue, and they lost against Rogue, and they didn't make playoffs as a mouse.
It's so
right?
Knacker, though.
It's so fucking Knacker.
But it is also a commitment to the player, though, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Knack knows I can fuck up and I'm not gone, right? But whoever SK sign, not even now, but the next 2 years, they're always in the back of their mind thinking, I cannot fucking pick my Yasuo that I think is really, it's really garbage, but, like, that I think is really strong, and I'm going to get a chance and I'm not going to get kicked, right? And to me here, it is worth coming 10th place or worth coming 9th place.
Right.
So your recruitment in the next off season is going to be in a better position. And sure, if you think Abbedagge is going to get you to Worlds, that's a completely other thing. But the Abbedagge I saw in LTA North, was probably the second worst player in the league, maybe the worst player in the league, and you're hoping that this guy is going to go and take you to Worlds? No. Like, even if SK come 5th, okay, even if SK comes 6th, I don't think it's worth it. Right? And yeah, like, I mean, I think you had to go and give this guy the chance. Either your scouting fucking sucked at the start of the year, or you didn't put the right environment around this guy to succeed. But, you know, this is not the way, right? Like, do what Na'Vi did, right? Na'Vi wanted to make a change in jungle, and they flipped it, and they have 2 of the most promising up-and-coming junglers on their roster, right? Which is great. Super, super great. The only way that this makes sense for SK is if you thought Bukada was your future and you wanted to bring in a stable mid laner, like a stable veteran mid laner to back up Bukada, and then you fucking sold Bukada for 200k. Like, I mean, like, that's the only way that it makes sense. And, you know, like, so it really, really rubs me up the wrong way. Like, a lot of the things, like, if you're SK, you have to gamble. But you can't fucking gamble on bringing, like, on changing your support to play with your AD carry. Then you kick your AD carry. Then you have, like, a rookie. So now you have, like, the worst support in the league. The only reason you brought that support in is because he has good synergy with a player that you then kick. Then you bring... Yeah, I mean, like, then you do this with Rika. Like, it just makes no sense to me at all. And it takes away your advantage to take gambles in the future. And that to me is the long-term damage that you're doing with this, right? It's not about short-term, it's about long-term. Yeah.
I mean, like, look, the thing is, I think that rant is pretty much spot on. Like, I get the changes needed to happen. I get that actually, how do I put this? I cast Janax and Rika last year with Kadui on BDSA doing crazy things. Like, they were smashing Nako. Janax was monstering Nako. I remember saying this at the beginning, but the last time I was on, because we were having this conversation. I said, look, I don't know what's happened mentally with these guys, but they've clearly been destroyed. Because actually these guys were mashing these players not so long ago in finals of Mir Masters, playing the same champions not that long ago. It's not like it was like 2 years ago or whatever. It was 3-4 months ago. And they've come in, and whatever the culture is at SK, whatever's going on, I suspect part of this will be behind this, is that the end result is these players did not turn up to their level. Part of that, I think, is because they're going to be afraid to get cut and mess up and to play like themselves. They didn't get to play. That is not the Janax we saw 4 months ago against those players. That is not the Rika we saw 4 months ago against those players. And they regressed. They got closer, and, you know, you could see the despair and the disappointment fill the way they played, bluntly. Not to get too poetic about it, but that is not what you hope. And I'm there with you, Peter. That isn't a way to build a roster and to make sure these rookies want to come to you, because the culture wasn't great for it.
Yeah, and I will say that, like, so my bad point as well was on this, on like the Bukada thing. If Bukada was your future, you've just sold your future for 200,000, for 200 million. You know, I mean, it's very, very strange to me. Like, the what's going on? Will it help SK? You know, maybe they'll come 8th, right? Maybe, but I mean, I'll say that watching them at NNO Cup, they did not look like that. There are 2 or 3 LFL teams that could push them to 5 games in a series, if not beat them in a series. That's what I would say. So it didn't even help there.
All right, let's go on then. What is your ugly point going to be, Initialise?
My ugly point is basically chatting around the Poby humanoid situation and Fnatic stuff in general. And I want to make this clear. This is not a hate thing about Poby. No problem there. But this decision is part of a wider thing about GMing that we've just been talking about generally. And scouting and team building in LEC has been so bloody weird over the last couple of years.
Yes.
And this is one of those flagship moments for that, right? Grabs very candidly said everyone but bot lane is on the plate, on the docket to potentially get switched out in off-season. Things need to change. We've got issues with work. We've got issues with the team synergy. Stuff is going wrong. We're making changes. And the changes that made is humanoid is gone. Fine. I think a lot of people were asking for that after 4 years. But Poby is the guy you pick out of LCK Challenger. What? Is this just because, like, I don't know what the internal metrics were. I don't know what they got scouted. They might know something that I don't. And actually comes in and we go, oh, damn, I was wrong. Great fit. And actually, we've already chatted about Razork potentially getting a chance to look more like Razork without the additional chefs in the kitchen. All of that is true. And it's clear it's not a hate thing about Poby. But he was okay in LCK Challenger. I watch the Atlas and Chronicler and all those guys co-stream that. I watch enough of that when I get the chance. And Poby was fine. He got a bit better. There was the fun time when he and Reckless were on the same squad and all of that stuff. But he was not a very special player. All the memes about him were more important because he was the greatest of some time. And they were making all those jokes. But the things that people are known for is the brand value. But it's a brand value of an LCK Challenger player. So why have you picked him up? Why is this the guy you've thrown your whole career, your whole trajectory of the year over, where Fnatic have won the regular season twice in a row and then filmed in playoffs? Poby's the guy you go to? What is going on in GMing? This is where you end up on. It's not even the best player out of Challenger League from the mid lane. You've got a whole ERL system behind you where I think for the longest time people have scouted ERLs incredibly poorly, basically because I think there's a whole thing with a lot of the teams that are doing well at EMEA Masters right now are teams like Lost Returns, who are content teams filled with exceptionally experienced players. And you've got Velia in there, of course, and Baus in there, of course, who are rookies in their own right with different aspirations, sure, but rookies. And they're doing really well. But that is a very different brand of team to someone like, okay, I'm looking for the next big thing. And I think that there is then this wider conversation about what is going on with GMing in EU. Why is this the move that we're seeing in the offseason for Fnatic, who want to win the damn league? What is going on with scouting to ERLs? We've got an insane ERL system with loads of leagues to scout through, and this is where you ended up.
I mean, let's be clear as well. Fnatic should be favourites to go to Worlds, right? Yeah. With no change, right? And why is that? It's because G2 and Koi are coming into the season with like no break, and they're either like sacrificing the early season scrims, or they're going to be playing exhausted by the time they're in playoffs, right? So there is the top 40. We said last split there was a clear top 4 gap. You would be very shocked if both Koi and G2 went to Worlds, right? Like, so Fnatic, starting from, it's not a level playing field at the start. KC and Fnatic are like starting here, and like G2 and Koi start here, right? So you have a natural advantage if you change nothing, right? So it's not like you have to fundamentally change everything now. You're starting from a big advantage just by doing literally nothing, okay? But let's have a little talk about how GMing in Europe works, because I think I saw a lot of this narrative about Poby, and I don't think it's quite correct, okay? Let's talk about how GMing because people say, oh, the scouting for the ERLs is off. You are 100% correct, but I don't think it's off purely on judging player skill. Right? Sure. So how does GMing work? Okay, so pre-agents. So the thing to realize is since like 2020, 2021, leakers have become much more important in the scene. Agents have become much more important in the scene. The how things work behind the scene has fundamentally changed. Okay, so when I was recruiting rookies in 2019, 2020, I just go to a player and I say, this is our project, come and join the project. Right? Now you don't talk to the players anymore. You go and talk to the players' agents. Often they're the ones who are pitching players to you. And as soon as let's say, okay, so somebody who has a reputation for scouting players, I will go and scout a player, and then everyone in the league within 3 days will know that I want to talk to that player. Okay? And then they're thinking, holy shit, this is a player that some team that has respectable scouting thinks is good. We've got to go and sign this player. And they don't think, why is this player being scouted? It's because of the culture fit. It's because there's specific assets that you really, really value very, very highly in this player. Right? There's a fit in the team. There's something else like this in the team. Perfect example of this, Noskeren back in the day, right? Noskeren, really, really good fit on Splice, but he goes to another team, completely garbage fit on the other team, right? And it sucks for his career, but he was on a team where they were just like, oh, Noskeren went to the quarterfinals of Worlds, right? We have to go and sign this guy, without thinking about the fit. And this is how the GMing works. GMing in Europe is not shit because people can't scout. Maybe they can't scout as well. It's because they have so little faith in their scouting.
The team building's poor.
Yeah, that their team building is poor. But the way that they're recruiting players is that there is a hive mind of things that because of how the scene has changed through leakers, and like a leaker comes to me and goes and says, oh, by the way, like I heard that you were interested in this guy, just so you know, these 4 other teams are interested in this guy. And like I don't really give a shit because I'm judging on my own look. But if this leaker is going to 4 other teams and saying, oh, by the way, did you know Heretics are trying to sign this guy? Then it tells you that teams aren't thinking. They're not thinking about why they want to go and recruit these players. They're not thinking about the fit. They're not thinking about the skill set. They're thinking this player has a really, really good reputation, so we're going to go and sign this guy that has a really, really good reputation purely for that. And that's where the problem is, right? It's like maybe Fnatic think Omon, or maybe they think Checolad has the potential to be good, but they know that it is less risky to go and sign a Korean, because then you have a shield. You go and say, oh, cultural difference, language barrier, all of these things we couldn't prepare for, right? It's not our fault. Oh, we tried our best, but the culture fit didn't work, right? It's always about looking for a way out, right? Because if you go and sign Rika, you go and say, oh, we tried to sign Rika. This guy was the hottest prospect. 4 different teams wanted to sign Rika. It's not our fault. He just wasn't good enough. Oh, it sucks, right? But maybe those other teams, if Rika had gone to one of those other teams, he would be on a team that properly put the situation around him, and he can succeed. But that's not what the GMs are thinking. The GMs are thinking, oh, we have this scouting. Maybe we have this guy who's number 1 on our scouting list. But oh, number 3 on our scouting list. 4 other teams want to say, that's what this agent is telling me. That's what this leaker is telling me. We should go and sign this guy. Less risk to me.
I mean, and then you add that into the points we had earlier about, so what happens if you don't perform or you're kicked? So then you've got all these players who are coming in and have to change their playstyles, change who they are on short notice as a rookie, where you've not had chance to become a more well-rounded player. At LEC level, at any rate. And then you get kicked after a split or 2 splits, and you're feeling like, oh, my days is our last chance. And for players like Genox or Rika, they knew that if they messed this up, they were gone. They're not getting another chance at LEC. And the moment it starts going wrong, it all falls apart. And then you took it like, okay, Niski role swap. How is that going to work in this team? Well, it doesn't work as a squad. We've chatted about, Paris, is he going to be the right fit there? Labrov on G2. It's taken a while for that to really work. And it's been a bit up and down again, fit stuff. And that has been a great issue with the undercut of if you don't work out, you're gone.
Yeah.
No,
I mean, yeah, go ahead.
I mean, on the last thing, I'll pick it up at the end there. I also do agree that is probably the worst thing about GMing in the modern day. It's not even that they get the wrong player. They just get the wrong player for their team and the team they're building, which the reason why it's so crazy to me that this is like almost a Achilles heel of seemingly most of the LEC GMs is because you can't even avoid that problem in like professional football, which has like infinite money poured into it. Like anyone who follows more than just like the Premier League or La Liga or whatever, you will know it happens every single year. There are players who are amazing in one or the other league who go to the other league and are fucking shit. Spoiler, if you're a big Arsenal fan, you think it's amazing that Gyökeres guy signed. It wasn't that great when it wasn't that great when he was in the Premier League last time, mate. That's all I'm going to tell you. So you never know. Some people, obviously in football, it can be the pace, the position, what tactical system you use. But I think there's so much of that in league. Like I always tell people, one of the reasons why my home game of Counter-Strike is way easier to evaluate talent in is as long as generally I'm playing a similar spot. Yes, whether we win or lose the game might depend on my teammates, but I can generally play my game to a somewhat like consistent degree most teams I'm in. The difference is in games like League of Legends, you have to actually always be one entity. It's not really a jungler and a support. It's like, what's the synergy between them? When do they link up, etc.? And so there's so many complicated, nuanced team aspects that if you fuck it up like this and treat it like you were doing a fantasy draft and you were just trying to get the best player, but they're not in the same team, you just get their stats from all the games they play in the league. That you can't make a team like that in league. It's been tried too many times. Why most of the super teams fail. It's usually not even that it's a super team. That's actually the misnomer. It's usually that you made a super team of like famously like 3 carries, and then they're all just like, give me all the resources. It's like there aren't enough fucking lanes in the game. Come on.
But this is why MKOI are the LEC champions, right? Because they're the ones doing the competent GM. Like the two teams that are doing the competent GMing job are MKOI and KC, right? Right? Why KC? Because KC signed these guys when they're 15, 14, I don't know how old they are, right, in the KC 13, right? And then they bring them up through their system and they're like, we will promote primarily from our system, okay? So it's harder for us to fuck it up. We're going to promote from our system.
Players,
yeah, we know these players, okay? Number one. What do Koi do? Koi are like, okay, we're going to go and sign a coach. He has an overriding vision. He wants to go and sign these players that other teams think are shit. Frescowi, he wants Frescowi. He can have Frescowi. Some people will call it nepotism, but this is our system, right? Our scouting system is this coach's system over everything else, and it doesn't matter if our players are shit, because what we're going to do is we're going to gradually improve. And I say that this is the same thing on Splice. This was when I was there. It's the same idea. What is your coach's system? Get a player who's a specialist in your system. Kasing, I think, perfect example of somebody who the team wasn't 100% sure on, but was very good in that meta. Bring him in. If you need to adjust, make the adjustment. You can make an adjustment later, but you have your fundamental system in place. Make the adjustments. What have Koi done? They brought in Jojo to replace Frescowi. At some point, maybe they'll bring in somebody else in a different role, but they're patient. They know that things will take time, and they're going to go and promote within the system, but they're not going to overhaul things, right? At the worst case, Koi will have 4 of those 5 players next year, right? Like that they currently have. They're not going to like overhaul things. So they have competent GM, and they don't give a fuck that everyone thinks Frescawi is garbage. They're going to find a way to make him work, right? Okay, those 2 teams, competent GMing. Okay, let's go over everyone else in the league, and I'm going to be as fast as I can because I know you have to leave reasonably soon in G2. We promoted a rookie jungler. That rookie jungler was playing with Mickey, who's one of the best supports in the league. Oh, but no, we're going to just promote another rookie jungler who we think is really, really good. We don't really care about the fit. Oh, but the most important position for jungle is jungle support, so we're going to change our support as well. These 2 have never played together. Oh, but it worked once for us in the past because we brought in Mickey. And Mickey and Yike came in at the same time, so Skewmon and Lavrov can come in at the same time. It's for sure going to work. No, of course, it's not going to work, right? If you wanted to bring in Skewmon, keep Mickey. If you wanted to bring in Lavrov, keep Yike, right? Like, just don't fundamentally change. This is a roster move that Koi would never have made, right? And that's why Koi are the champions, right? Fnatic. Okay, well, let's come back to Fnatic later. GX. Okay, GX didn't make any changes. I don't have too much to comment about. GX Heretics kept their roster together. Yeah, the good job. We've talked about SK, but let's talk about BDS. BDS looks like they're going to be a roster which is built around their coach's vision. But then you sign 113. You are the guy who signed 113 when the rest of the community told you 113 wasn't that good. You kicked Shio to sign 113. Shio, who is was a top half jungler in the league at his worst and was a top 2 jungler in the league at his best and took you to Worlds, despite what people say about Adam. He took you to Worlds. Sure, you lost in the 3rd, 4th playoff against NA, but he took you there, right? And you're less than a year later, he's gone for fucking 113, okay? So you think 113 is your guy? Gone within a year, okay? You think Irrelevant was your guy? We didn't even talk about Irrelevant. Holy shit. Okay, I give them some leeway on the Irrelevant thing. He was pretty hacked, right? But the 113 thing is we talk about Rogue. But these teams are the teams that need to take gambles, but they're not thinking long term. If you want to gamble, you have to think long term. And how do you go and establish things long term? It's you build yourself up as somewhere where players can go to, right? And sure, if you need to be a feeder club for a few years, be a feeder club for a few years. You know, it's not the end of the world, right? If people think, oh, I'm going to go to SK and then I'll be really successful and then I can move on to G2 in the future, fine. Do that for a few years until you've established yourself. You're signing all the best rookies and then you can go and do that in the future. But you need to have a good long-term plan. But the problem that we see with a lot of these things is it's a fundamental change without a long-term plan. And this bothers me a lot, right? About how the GMing works. And I don't think, sure, we flamed SK a lot, justifiably, but the teams at the bottom of the league, they have to gamble, right? And they're going to gamble on Koreans a lot because Koreans are cheaper than the hype rookies because of how the current system works. Again, you have a rookie, that agent has gone and pitched the rookie to every single team he possibly can, and is going to each of those teams and saying 4 other teams are interested, drives the price up. You go and sign a Korean rookie, maybe 1 other team is interested, maybe no other team is interested. You sign that guy for very, very cheap. So I don't like it. I don't like the ERL players are missing out on opportunities because Koreans are coming in, but it's cheaper to sign Koreans. It's considered lower risk, and that's why so many Koreans are getting signed right now on the lower teams because it's a budget issue, right? Because you can't afford to compete with the
buyout. Yeah, the buyouts are too high.
But the teams that I can shit on are the teams that have the budget, right? Fnatic have the budget. They built a team. Where their personality clash. I'm not going to go behind the scenes stuff, but there's personality mismatches between the players, and they did nothing to fix it for multiple years. The one split where they were really, really good, they brought in a performance coach. He was gone by the end of the split. Right? So they didn't put this in place, and now their solution is the fans really don't like Humanoid because he doesn't kiss the badge, and like he has this persona that he doesn't give a shit. Right? He gives a shit. Like he just has a weird way.
He just pretends not to sometimes. Yeah.
He's like too cool for to get. It's just a computer game. I don't give a shit. But you
doesn't matter anyway.
Yeah. But you go and question this guy about a random LPL game that was being played 2 weeks ago. And he knows, he knows everything. He can tell you all of these little things. And, maybe if he's not doing that on Fnatic anymore, maybe that's on Fnatic. Because I'm telling you, I know him for multiple years on Splice and Mad Lions, and so does Mac. And that humanoid is not the humanoid that Fnatic are described, like the guy that doesn't give a shit about working, all of these things, is not the same guy. He still hates solo queue. He always fucking hated solo queue, right? But he did other things to make up for that, and maybe he's not doing that on Fnatic, okay? But But this is, sorry, I'm ranting too much. I'm going to bring my point to a close soon. But the point is that it's not about, you brought in Humanoid because Humanoid won 2 championships in a row, and then you didn't have a Kazi on your team, right? Because Humanoid is successful because he's very, very aggressive and he's very harsh, but then you have somebody who's a bit of a clown who lifts up the atmosphere, right? Who's like, yeah, exactly. And that is... Fnatic have the budget to do more. They just don't, like, the way Fnatic goes, they just literally only look at player skill within the context of an individual team or solo queue. They don't look at how the player fits into the team, and it's always been this way with Fnatic. Even when Fnatic was successful, the Fnatic way was always bringing the most mechanically gifted player we possibly can every single time and flip that it will work. And it doesn't work anymore in EU because they don't have caps anymore. Secondly, they can't just take all the best ERL talent anymore because it's competed for by a lot of teams, and they haven't adjusted their strategy for multiple years. So Nemesis is the best ERL mid laner, but there's no fucking way he's going to Fnatic after how they treated him last time he was there, right? The decisions you make now have long-term consequences. And, maybe if Fnatic were a better org in 2020, they would have Nemesis this year. And then we would be talking about how fucking good their team is and how they can compete for a title. But they don't have any options in Europe anymore. The top talent is already being signed by orgs like Koi and KC and G2 at a stretch, right? So now they have to go overseas. They're in the middle of the year. They have to go and make a change. And how they ended up at Poby, he's cheap. I mean, he's not Humanoid. So the fans are good. And now you just have, in the past, Fnatic fans would be insufferable because they would always be like, oh, we're going to win title. Now I look at Fnatic fans and they're just like, oh, we just want people to be wrong about Poby. It's not even about being a title. Like if Poby plays well, this team doesn't go to Worlds, I think Fnatic fans may be okay with that from what I've seen online. But it just shows Fnatic are an org that we should be harsh on because they have the resources to do better. Right, and they just don't, because how does recruitment work? It works by how many people are interested. And sorry for my rant. I hand over the floor back to you.
I'll make it quick then. There's 2 points to go still. So the quick version is this. That's why I said earlier, I do think if you look at the playoffs, it's not just because they won. MCOY was the best team in the most literal sense of team. Like, gelled as a unit, played around the same style, everyone knew their job, streamlined their game, shot calling components exist. No other team could you say that for. Carmine Corp had their flaws, G2 actually still looks mega flawed, and the joke is Fnatic just destroyed themselves. Like, that really was it. If you ever look at those 2 rosters on paper, right, before a game is played, if I show you the MCOY roster and the Fnatic roster should win every fucking time. If this was a video game with LS robots, they would win every single match. Yeah. But in real human terms, with all the components that come in the team and intangibles, they actually are like fucking 3/4 as good in a playoff match. So that's real, that's legit. And then I would quickly say on the actual Poby Humanoid thing, I haven't got time to do a big rant, but I've done it on other shows, don't worry. The problem is I heard behind the scenes that Humanoid is the person who sort of doesn't really give that much of a fuck this specific year in this specific team. Now, I'm sorry, I actually still put that on Fnatic largely, because that's not a 5-minute over a coffee conversation in the off-season. That's a massive conversation that should be ongoing the whole off-season of like, if you come back for this next year, you are in for the whole year. We are committing that we are going to try and win the split and go to Worlds. There's no like, oh, I'm tapped out after spring. That can't exist. Look, I can blame Humanoid for that, but I would also say it wasn't his first year in your team. Why are you letting him do that choice? Why are you giving him the power to make that happen? And then once he's gone, you aren't going to get anyone for summer. And you know what? You know what's weird? I actually will shade in the tiniest bit of hopium, not copium, hopium, which is, I actually do think like the Razork point. There's a weird world where the real problem with this topic, by the way, is everyone's still thinking about when Poby played instead of Faker, which was really bad, and their entire team collapsed, and it was all shit. So they're thinking he's going to be really bad, and the whole team's going to collapse. I don't even think that'll happen in LEC. I think in LEC, he'll just be an average mid laner. He won't be a really good, he won't be really bad. He'll just be like the 5th best mid laner. He'll probably play quite a conservative style because he's a Korean guy coming in. He doesn't know anything about the space. He doesn't want to rock the boat. He's just going to come in and do his job, what the coaches tell him. And in a fucked up sense, I actually think that Fnatic was one of the worst, like too many chefs in the kitchen. And I could actually see a world where this guy not talking and just playing a boring, safe game could actually, like, listen, I don't think he can ever hit the heights of what the Humanoid lineup should have done, which has been number one. But I think it actually could potentially be better in the playoffs than last splits.
Yeah.
As mad as that sounds, because it might actually mean now, like I say, not just Razork, Mickey X, but if you're upset, you're the one carrying the team, mate. Just get ready. Like, this is the team you've been waiting for the whole time. There's no short circuit. There's no guy to disagree. In theory, now everyone actually gets exposed or shown to be for what they are. So if there was any weird humanoid effect, it's gone now. Like that excuse is gone. So I don't think it's a bad one. Right? We obviously only have a little bit of time, so let's make the other points quickly, shall we?
I just got one more point I really want to make about this, okay? Which is, firstly, some positives on the Fnatic thing, right? Number one, good job for grabs. Something I've always flamed people for is the decision-making not being really, really clear, right? You know, do we blame the GM for this? Who's making the roster? Grabs has come out specifically and taken ownership of this. And he said, this is my decision, right? And as a coach, you never have to do that. You never have to do that. So he is the one. If Poby is a great success, credit to grabs. If he's a failure, don't blame grabs. He's a nice guy, but like we know where the decision making comes from. Second thing is Poby. The way that Fnatic want to play is very similar to how T1 challengers play, which is their bot lane is super, super cracked. Like, Poby's job is literally sit there in mid lane, just push the wave if the enemy mid laner roams. They have a mega hyperactive jungle and a really, really good bot lane, and that is, in theory, how Fnatic want to go and play the game, so it could be a good fit, right? My issue with this is not that I don't think he's that good, right? I think he's inoffensive, right? I don't think he's going to like drag Fnatic to 6th or something in the league. My issue with this is you never gave the Humanoid project the chance to work because you knew there was going to be personality clashes, and you never put the performance coach that was required in order to make those personality clashes work properly, right? And you killed the motivation of this guy who is a motivated player but just pretends not to be motivated. But now I think that he's acting not motivated, right? So we just leave that to one side. But that was my final thought. So do you have any final thoughts on that, Initialise?
We haven't got time for that. So it doesn't matter.
Yeah, my thoughts are out. It's fine.
I love to talk. I love to talk too much. I'm sorry.
What we'll do is here's the thing. I will just drop my final point, but you can make your point now, Peter.
Okay. So my point, LEC format is dreadful. The way that this works is for BO3 single round robin, come top 2 in your group, you need to win a single best of 5 in order to be able to go to Worlds. Like, what? If there's a very real possibility that Koi or G2 might not come top 2 in their groups because they're starting scrims late. Like, imagine a world where you have Fnatic versus GX for one slot and KC versus Heretics for another slot. Would you be satisfied even if you don't think Koi are very good and G2 Fnatic and KC went to Worlds? Would you be satisfied that G2 that those teams got to Worlds because they got to start the split stronger because they didn't have to go to those kind of things? And the problem is that the single round robin, never good. Single round robin into a double elimination, really, really, really bad because of how the lower bracket works, right? Because it means that you should never be able to go to Worlds winning just a single best of 5.
Right.
And the irony is, LPL already has a better format. Just fucking copy the LPL format.
Yeah, true.
Easy. Have a staggered thing, copy the LPL playoffs, then we don't have any of these problems. The groups look ridiculously unbalanced because you have one group that has Vitality, GX, who I think are probably 5-6 in the team, KC, Koi, who I think are probably 1-3 or 1-2. It seems that one group is a little bit easier than the other group.
Yeah.
But that to me is a concern going into the split. Yep.
Go on then, Initialise.
I think it's also just quite opaque for viewers. I think it's changed so much. People don't quite get how it works. I think we should be more best of 5s to get into there. I think the call out about the groups being unbalanced. I think basically since they moved to 3 splits, they haven't exactly figured out how they want to balance too many show days and the costs with that, with actually a format that works. And it's still not been solved. And I think LEC probably just needs to pull the pocketbook out and just add an extra week of play in, and it would solve a lot of things.
Yep.
The main problem, I think, is this, which is not only is this whack, because this is like a weird format style that we actually used to have in Europe about like 8 years ago or something mad, when we copied the LPL and did the 2 groups where it was similar things, except that in the past it was like a draft style, like the top seeded teams picked the teams in their group. But even worse, this is probably the worst timing ever to do just a traditional split into 2 groups, because the other major leagues do a really good system where you divide into 2 groups of a really good group and a shit group. And what happens is is if you hate the LCK and LPL bad teams, you don't watch the bad group. I only watch the Ascend group, and the joke is that my favourite league is the Ascend group of LPL, because you could have even done that here. You could have just split the teams in 5 and 5, and then the top 5 could just play like a double round robin against. That would be unbelievable. Like, you'd have all the best matches. You'd actually, I think, pump the viewership up. You'd have crazy interest in the league because you'd see all the best teams play each other in proper series over and over and over again. I think also, surely that would battle test you, see who's actually good. The other reason this one is whack is you could, even with the same sort of constraints, make just a better format. And I agree. For the playoffs, it's just obviously better. Like the it actually baffles me to this day that Riot, it's their ecosystem, and the LPL is doing the best playoff format for years now, at least years in there, and they just don't copy it. It's the most obvious thing to copy ever. I don't get it. Like, you have the double limb part once you get to the top 4, but then you make the single limb before. Like, it's so perfectly done and streamlined. I would have just done it years ago. So I agree. I don't think it's a very good system. And I also do hate that angle, like the idea you can win 1 BO5 that can get you to Worlds. It just makes sense.
Yeah. Just a quick question for you, Thorin. If you were doing Ascend in Europe, would you have 4 teams or 5 teams in the Ascend group?
I mean, in theory, I would say you do like half and half, just like you do in the other leagues. Look, it means you have one worse team, but like that's just the nature of how the leagues worked out this year, you know. And also that way, in theory, you can, fucking bring up like 1 or 2 teams from the lower group for the bottom for the playoffs. The difference is, though, that's also a more fair lower bracket position to be put in that scenario. I agree with you. I actually think this group might even yield some funky lower bracket aspect.